I indicated that I started to sketch yesterday. I noticed a few things. For example, I can't glaze the whole thing for you. And the reason for it is this is still wet. We know this is dry. And the way I painted it yesterday is I used a watercolor brush. I then used the Indian yellow. This is Indian yellow. It's a very transparent paint. It's a Winsor Newton, and that seems to be the best one. And then I mixed it with liquid. Liquid is this, and it's the original. They come in different types of. They come in a gel. They come in a portrait type of liquid. This is an alkyd. Alkyd is used as a glazing compound, and alkyd also is used as a medium. I don't use any type of turpentine, nor do I use any type of linseed oil. I only use the liquid, and as a result, it helps make this painting a little bit more like an alkyd, only because then it dries faster. Now what I did yesterday is I went ahead and I painted all of this. Most of it is already dry, but I can at least show you the glazing process somewhat. For example, didn't want this to be as yellow as it is. So what I did do is I mixed some transparent colors here. And the one that I like to use quite a bit is the Winsor Newton transparent gold ochre. This is what Sargent used a lot on his paintings. And I use a lot of the Winsor Newton Indian yellow. It's a wonderful color, and it brightens the painting up dramatically. Now, as you can see, I've got a lot of burnt sienna, raw sienna. I've got all sorts of ochres in here. But again, this is only an hour and a half sketch. But now I'm going to start building. And what I did yesterday, you see the foreground, for example, and all of this, I used watercolor brushes. I used these types of watercolor brushes. I put the liquid in here. These are all transparent colors. And I went ahead and I filled in all of the areas as fast as I could. The whole point of this is to be as rapid and spontaneous as possible. I used the watercolor brushes only to make sure that I spread it down rapidly enough. Now, do I use watercolor brushes in the end? No, I do not. But just to give you an example, I'm going to go ahead. I mixed a little bit of Indian yellow and some of the alizarin, and I also mixed just a little of that gold ochre. What you have to do in essence is put some liquid on. Now this darkens the color up a little bit, but this tells you what the process is. If you want to glaze it darker, you put more paint down. If you want to paint it lighter, you put more liquid and less paint. Now let's see what happens if I want to make this a little darker. Oh yeah, this is wonderful how it works. And you just put it on as quickly as you possibly can, and it makes it a little darker. I'm not going to be totally happy with this color yet, because it is in fact still a little bit lighter than I want it to be, because I will wait now for this thing to dry, and then I will do another 1 or 2 glazes on this the next couple of days when this dries. This is not going to be my finished product, because I do in fact want to put the fat on over the lean, and that is the finishing touches is really what makes a painting. So this kind of tells you right now how to glaze. You see that the undercolor, you still see some of that, or maybe a better way of doing it is this. What if I put just pretty much straight ochre and a little bit of the alizarin, and I decide to make this foreground a little bit darker? You see how it works? It actually is so transparent, the color, that it actually makes an adjustment, and you still get the beautiful underpainting. And this is how you build the painting. This is what you do. I put the trees in. The beauty of this is that it keeps the darker colors pretty vivid, and you could see the trees, and of course you finish that off. But again, I want to make this a little bit darker. I'm going as fast as I can just to get the irregularity on the trees in the background. Now, what happens if I just put straight gold ochre on here? Let's see what, oh, there's the darker. This is really probably what I should have done in the first place, instead of mixing it with the Indian yellow and making it even brighter than I wanted it. So it gives you that type of a feel. And so I can go ahead and finish this here. Now, I can't glaze down here because this is still wet. I might be able to glaze here. Yep, this is all pretty much dry. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to finish this off real fast. You notice how fast I'm going. Now the sky is not going to be this either. The sky, I'm not going to do hardly any glazing at all. I'm just going to do the glazing on the actual foliage that we have in front of us. I added more liquid, and I added more sienna. I added more burnt raw sienna and burnt sienna. I added a little more of the Indian yellow. And then, of course, I have a very special paint, which I can't find anymore. It's a Brera. It's dark. It's a green, but you can make it by using some blues and of course, some sap green and mixing that to get this type of a color. But I happen to have it, and I'm going to just show you, even though I can't paint down here, in the end I'm going to show you, I may want to darken a few areas up a little bit just to be a little bit more dramatic. But here I am, I've already painted this portion here, and I painted this portion. I think I'm pretty much squared all the way here. I'm going to move on down. I would like to make this a little darker, at least here, and I would like to put a little more Indian yellow here, just as my second base, and then from then on I will start then using the fat, thicker oil paints to finish my painting. So here I go. I want to highlight the tips of these reeds as much as possible, go as fast as I can. I don't have to cover all the areas, but just to get the feel, I want to just highlight these tips a little bit. Okay. And again, this is Indian yellow. It's a wonderful, wonderful color. But you see this green, if I add a little Indian yellow, how it changes the color? That's all what the glazing process is all about. You would never be able to mix that color unless you mix it in the glazing process on your painting itself. I sketched this painting yesterday really quickly with these markers. These are washable markers. In the past I used to use pencils, I used to use graphite, but it was hard, especially when you use glazes, hard to get the actual images off the canvas. So I found these washable craft markers. They're very cheap. This cost about $2 for all these colors. And I go ahead and I'm actually drawing with these markers on my canvas. Now the reason I didn't use an acrylic wash on here is because this canvas is oil primed. You cannot put acrylic on oil primer. But you can put an oil on acrylic primer and an acrylic on an acrylic primer. The difference is you can't, in this case, there is no acrylics involved. But this is a great little tool, again, in order for you to be able to sketch out the item and then go over it with your glazing or your washes. And that what it does is it actually dissolves the actual marks that you use. This painting, for example, doesn't have any marks on it anymore because I've gone over with the process. So I wanted to darken up just a little bit the bottom portion of the reed area. Not everything, and don't be consistent, just a little here, because nature is so erratic in everything that it does that it's not a bad idea just to darken it up. So I'm darkening this up a little bit here, very rapidly. Be as spontaneous as you possibly can. Now, when we put these reeds down, I mean the water and the reflection, I might add a little bit of this green color just to get that feel. Here's the reflection on the water. Very quickly, and again, you have the prior reflection, and now I'm just going ahead and glazing this process. You can see it's still kept everything basically the same. In other words, you see some of the underpainting still. That's the point of glazing. This is not going to be the finished product again, as I indicated. Now, what you can also do is at this stage of the game, put in the shoreline. You can just play with it a little bit, and you see how all of a sudden it kind of comes alive if you put that shoreline in there. Sketch it in, okay? there is your shoreline. Now, we can do the same process here and the same process here, but this now pretty much tells you the way this goes. Now, I am in fact going to make an adjustment as time goes on. This is the reflection in the water. I'm going to make an adjustment, make this brighter, and then I'm also going to go over this because the actual distances don't really jive with the shoreline. So I'm going to have to make that adjustment. Of course, in the very end, after I do the sky and after I do the water, then I put all my finishing touches in. Then I go ahead and I put some of the leaves on the trees and that sort of thing. Now, I'm going to say this one color here, Bera makes this. I think it's, yeah, Barrera. And as a result, it's an Italian paint. I bought quite a bit of this, but I can't find it anymore. But it's a very transparent dark green. It's a wonderful color. I'm just going to show you now, because it is darker. I can use the same brush. I'm going to show you how transparent it really is. But let's assume now that I want just in this area. I'm not really supposed to do this because it's still not totally dry, but I don't think it really has any real effect. But I'm going to darken it up. See how it darkens it up? And how you still get to see some of the underpainting? And that's the whole point. Go as quickly as you can, go as spontaneously as you can, and really that's what makes the painting. Now, this I'm going to have to wait for this thing to dry also. And again, I'm using a watercolor brush just to fill in the areas, and then I will highlight it at a later time with thicker paint and with thinner brushes. And I will at that stage of the game go either to a badger brush, or I might go to a mongoose brush. But this is an example as to how to quickly put in some of the painting here. Now I wanted to finish this part off also. This is going to be a little darker. There's the shoreline. But this gives you an example of how the glazing process works. Now I have to wait for it to dry. So far I've got about an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 40 minutes invested in this painting. Again, as I said, I sketched it out first with this. I then put the glazing process over it. It's an oil primered canvas, which means you cannot use acrylic to sketch it in. But if you had a acrylic primer, you can do that. So I'm going to go leave this painting. I'm going to show you one more painting that I did with a glazing process and using a little bit different of a technique.